one of the things that we're getting from this afternoon's conference. This morning conference was about the energy crisis, the price of oil. The afternoon conference, which started about 4 o'clock, 4:30. They were talking about one of the American delegates. I wasn't told who exactly it was talking about the the concern that the American citizens have had with the housing prices going down. So they're not investing that money. So what they needed to do is they needed to create the illusion that everything is going well. So what they're going to do over the next year and a half is to bring the market back up to 1998, 1999 levels. They're going to get all the suckers to invest whatever little money they have left over, and that's when they're going to make the economy bottom drop out. They need to destroy the economy because as we're running out of oil, when people don't travel, at least that's what they're saying, when people don't travel, when people don't have money, they don't travel, they don't spend any money, which means you don't waste a lot of oil and natural gas. That's actually the two people who are members of the Bilderberg Club.
It's actual members that are.
They're members of the Bilderberg Club who for years and years and years have been going and participating in all the conversations. They've always been dead on, always. And last year they said the oil prices are going to go up to 150. At the time it was 39, went up to 76, basically doubled. If it doubles again, it's going to be back to where these people.
They attack Iran, it will at 150.
Well, the Iran thing is on the back burner. It was very much on the agenda last year, but from what I'm getting at this year's lunch, today's lunch, and a few people playing golf, the Iran is definitely sour, and they're not exactly sure how to do this thing. There's just too many consequences, too many repercussions. Anyway,
but they told them no. I mean, they said don't attack Iraq. Half of them back in.
Well, I think it's different. I think the neocons. I think the Bush administration is not in the same position as they were 2, 3, 4 years ago, as they are now. So the whole point is that
28% approval rating. Yeah.
We still have 2 days of Bilderberg conference because it started late, a day late. It's going to go on until Sunday afternoon. I think it's going to go Sunday morning. Still going to have discussing something. Anyway, it's on all day tomorrow. So we'll find out a lot more about what they're going to be talking about tomorrow. The first item on the agenda is Eurasia, Russia, China, and the relation that the Russians and the Chinese have with the Americans. That's the first item on the agenda, first thing in the morning, and that's that discussion forum will be led by Richard Colonel.
The New World Order, as we're seeing it evolve, is exactly the opposite of what our founding fathers intended by developing the Constitution, the tripart form of government where you have division of powers between the legislative, judicial, and executive branches. When our founding fathers established the Constitution of the United States, they intended to have the local government as being the superior government over the state government and the federal government. Unfortunately, over the last 50 years, the reverse has occurred. Now we have an all-powerful federal government. Jefferson said when that happens, we will have a tyranny that is far worse than the one that they had just separated, which was, of course, England. We now have a government basically that is a tyrannical form of government in the federal government. It will become more so in the future because they have no accountability to the actual local person. The reason why we had local government as being the most powerful government in our Constitution was the fact that these were people that were being elected by the people over which they had jurisdiction. Now we have jurisdiction by bureaucracy at the federal level that has no accountability whatsoever to the local person. And that will always result in tyranny eventually.
Bilderberg's ultimate goal is a world government for the United Nations to evolve into a world government, and they're making progress, and we must stop that progress. The fact that the UN is now the standing army of, the NATO is now the standing army of the United Nations that was established at the 50th anniversary celebration of NATO, pending before the UN for at least 3 years now, is legislation to impose a direct tax on all the people on Earth, their favorite being a 10-cent tax on barrel of oil head, but it was established the president of the UN directly taxing individuals throughout the world. And of course, the American Union, the NATO is to expand throughout the Western Hemisphere, evolve into the American Union. The dollar will be the euro, and already the groundwork is being laid for the Asian Pacific Union. The goal is to divide the world into 3 great regions for the administrative convenience of a world government, which the UN will become in our lifetime unless we win this fight.
I think that their plans are not coming together as quickly as they would have liked and would have hoped. For example, their idea for breakup of Canada, the initial plan was for 1996. We stopped them because we found out what their plan was. That was in King City and Toronto. Hundreds of thousands of people came out onto the street protesting the possible breakup. So these people postponed their plans to the year 2000. Now they have postponed them to the year 2007. The United States and Canada more or less are one nation now because you have the military code sharing. So the United States and Canadian military basically are working on the same wavelength.
Congress has already been signing its authority over to international bodies, and the World Trade Organization already has more authority over our trade disputes than our own Congress. Can you speak to that? It's already happening.
Well, yes, the WTO has ordered Congress to change some of the trade laws, and Congress comes running back like a political child and follows orders. And I forgot exactly what the deal was, something to do with tariffs or something. But because we're part of the World Trade Organization, they, in effect, nullified the laws of Congress. Say, you got to change that law.
We are adapting our Supreme Court, our Constitution, to fit within this legal model of the world. We are being homogenized into the world. Our military is being homogenized and standardized into the world format. Everything that's happening through NATO and all the rest. NATO is the military branch of the European Union. We're going to have one here for the North American Union to enforce our borders, supposedly. The ASEAN, or the new Asian Union, will have another, and so forth. This is going to be, within a couple of years, it looks like, standardized all around the world.
If you really look at the world, up until the Renaissance, which you had basically had the feudal society with the slaves and the slave owners, then suddenly with the Renaissance, the ideals of Socrates, the ideals of Solon, took forth. And if we kind of jump forward to the reign of Louis the 11th and the Henry the 7th in England, these people, for the first time in the history of mankind, the ideals of nation state, which defines the United States, the idea of the government working for the people, not people working for the government, the idea of the social good, of greater good for humanity, came about. And if we jump to the 1760s, in Europe, the European intelligentsia, the people like Bailly and Lafayette, they realized that to destroy, the old world order, to destroy the European monarchy, what they needed to do, they needed to create a state. And that's what the idea of the United States came from. This Eden on earth of a nation where every man and woman were created equal. You had the freedom of speech, where you had for the first time in the history of mankind the ideal of nation state, of people, of governments working for the people and not people working for the governments. And so these people like Lafayette and Bailly and other European intellectuals and thinkers, they've built themselves around the figure of Benjamin Franklin in the United States. And through this man, the idea was to create the Constitution of the United States and then import that Constitution back into Europe and use that Constitution to destroy the old world order, which was basically the old order led by the royalty of European nations. Now, the British East Indian Company, led at the time by Lord Shelburne, who was basically the treasurer of the royal family and the man who ran the Committee of 300, the Council of 300 was called at the time, realized that they were looking at a very, very grave crisis. So what they wanted to do, what they needed to do, they needed to destroy the idea of the United States as a nation. That's where the idea of the American Revolution came about. Now, thankfully, the Committee of the Council of 300, they lost that revolution. But what they tried to do, and they were able to succeed, is by forcing the French Revolution, they destroyed the concept of nation state. And we had to wait until after the Napoleon III, and then we had to jump to the age of the Fifth Republic of de Gaulle until we finally saw that nation state building that the United States was built on. Now, what they've done, the Jacobean Terror, 1789, 1794, the French Revolution, that was the concept of terror created by the Council of 300, the same Council of 300 which today lives on in the body of the Bilderbergers. Now the ideal hasn't changed. They're still pursuing the same goal, the goal to destroy humanity, to create the Nietzschean man-beast. And again, the Jacobean terror, the siege of Bastille, which basically a terrorist act, that's what it was. There was very little difference. In my conferences, I always talk about, if you want to understand 11th of September, you need to understand the French Revolution. What happened in Bastille is the same thing that happened on 11th September. The concept of man-beast, the concept of terror for terror's sake, the idea of Napoleon, which is one of the things that people do not understand. Napoleon worked basically for the British government. He was the agent, not literally an agent, but because of Napoleon's terror, destruction for destruction's sake, the man destroyed all of Europe and debilitated the Europe. And as a result, the only superpower left standing was Great Britain, controlled by Council of 300, which were the forerunners to today's Bilderbergers. Well, the idea of world government, again, in the future world order, when you have slaves and slave owners, you don't need a population base of 6 billion people, because these people need to eat, otherwise they die. So you might as well just get rid of half of the population base. And again, we saw that in 1974 report, which was leaked years ago, the 9th of April, 1974, report signed by Henry Kissinger in the last dying months of Nixon's administration, when they were talking about reducing the population base by 3 billion people. It's on page 9 of that report. I think it's point 29C. They're looking at ways, again, they're looking at ways scientifically how to reduce the population base. And what is so terrifying about that document is they're using graphs, line charts, pie charts to talk about killing it's genocide, that's what it is, killing 3 billion people using graphs and pie charts. And if you jump to today and you see what is going on today, it's very easy to understand that what they were talking about in 74 is coming around today. In the very near future, if we're paying right now $75, $76 a barrel, and in the near future we're paying $150, $200 a barrel, what's going to happen is to transport apples from point A to point B is going to cost an exorbitant amount of money, which means that poor people will not be able to pay $50 per apple, and they will die. And the same will happen to people who live in Canada, who live in Scandinavian nations. Anywhere there is, you have this terror, you have to overcome these 40, 50 degree below zero winters. They will just die because they will not have heat to heat their homes. So the Bilderbergers don't physically need to eliminate 3 billion people by putting a gun to their head. They can do it in a very, very subtle way, again, using the control, the population control, and we're seeing it right now as oil goes up, as the food quality goes down. The age of the $10,000 Caesar salads, or $10,000 kiwis, or 10,000 kilometers, kiwis that travel from New Zealand, then they get packaged in Norway, then they're sent to Spain, and then finally get to the United States where they're sold, in Loblaws, are over. If you want to eat kiwis, you better grow them themselves. If you want to eat bananas, you better grow them themselves. I think the future of humanity is based, the survival of humanity is going to be based on our ability to live in much smaller community. If not, unfortunately, we're playing into the hands of the Bilderbergers and the world elite.
One of the things that we need to recognize in infrastructure is what causes the economy to grow. Yes, we need private property rights. Yes, we need a good economy. But the economy is also dependent upon our transportation system of being able to get products from one area to another. The whole Agenda 21 concept compartmentalizes that economy. In other words, they environmentalists want us to be able to grow and produce everything that the local region needs. We won't need it. They do not want us to have this transportation. They do not want us to have the ability to draw tomatoes from South America into the United States. They want us to, if we cannot produce it in the United States during the middle of winter, then we shouldn't have it. If we cannot produce it in your local community, then we shouldn't have it. This is all part of their vision, their view of sustainable development. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's the way they elected to do it. Why? Because they believe, one, that nature is God, and that two, they want to have control. The more they can control, the better they can be able to accomplish what they want in our lives. One of the things that most people do not understand is most of the environmental laws that we have created over the last 40 years have come from a very small group of people through what is known as the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. This itself has been created and funded and sponsored by principals like Prince Philip or Prince Charles, as well as the Rockefeller Foundation. If you think back, not very many years ago, if you talked about the Bilderbergers, if you try to talk about the Trilateral Commission or the Club of Rome, you would be called some sort of conspiracist nut. Those organizations, we were told, did not exist. It certainly did not have an agenda that we claimed that they had. Now it's all out in the open. They will lie and they will conspire to keep the truth from the people until they no longer can, and then they'll paint it as just something that's normal. But think about it. Think just a moment about it. You have 135 people roughly in the Bilderbergers. You have about 175 in the Trilateral Commission. These people are making policy decisions for every single human being on planet Earth. Somewhere less than 500 people if you look at it in total, maybe 1,000, doesn't matter. These people are making decisions for the entire world. Do you really want that? One of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that this concept of regionalization has been around for a long time. In 1973, the Club of Rome actually published a diagram showing that they wanted to divide the world up into 10 different regions, financial regions. They called them actually financial kingdoms, in which each kingdom would have its own separate economic integrity, so that they would be able to carry forth the types of supervision, the types of economic flow and so forth that is necessary to stabilize what is going on in the world and provide the mechanism, the structure, architectural structure, to begin the population reduction that they've always been wanting to promote. In order to achieve their idea of world government, or global governance as they now call it, they wanted to actually divide the world up into 10 economic regions. They called them 10 kingdoms, but that was kind of a language that just didn't fit very well within the psyche of the American people and Europeans at the time, so they changed it to financial regions, and that's what it's been called ever since. It's one of the issues in which all of the member organizations of this effort, of the Anglo-American faction, have been working on. The Trilateral Commission, the Club of Rome, the Bilderbergers, the CFR, and so forth have all been working on this. And here you can see the diagram of how they envisioned it back in 1973. When it came out in 1995, Our Global Neighborhood was the United Nations Commission on Global Governance. This is where they begin to finally put it together in the form of a document. This document has been the actual template that's been using ever since 1995. If you look at what's actually going on, what they called regional groups, not only are this 500 or 1,000 people actually developing the policy for the world, they're developing policy that benefits them, not us. I worked closely with the EPA and the U.S. Forest Service and many environmental organizations, and it became very obvious to me that they really weren't interested in protecting the environment. They were interested in advancing an agenda. And so I began to do research as to what it is that was motivating them and where they were going. And I was shocked to realize that at least in the leadership, both of our government and the non-governmental organizations that were involved in this, were what's called pantheists, the belief that nature is God, and therefore their role was not in serving the American people, but in protecting nature from the American people. It was actually 100 years ago with Muir in starting the Sierra Club and so forth, and he again was a pantheist, the belief that nature is God. I won't go into that particular aspect of it, but he truly believed that we need to set vast acreages of land aside for the principal purpose of allowing nature to go her own way, because in essence, nature is the foundation of all life, and therefore we must protect it at all costs. It actually languished for about 100 years until well, not 100, about 60 or 70 years until the 1960s with the advent of the New Age movement and the counterculture movement. And then it began to take on some real power.
Which thought it was counterculture, but really foundation funded the whole time.
That's right. The whole counterculture movement was orchestrated and funded not only by the foundations, but was inspired by a pantheistic belief system, a cult religious belief system, whose origins are found in theosophy, or the belief that nature is God, and taken through what is now known as Lucifer Trust, which is the organization for the elite to implement their ideas, headed up by Alice Bailey in the first half of the 20th century. The whole global warming issue is a farce. It's a sham, basically, to advance this agenda and create a condition in which the United States, the citizenry of the United States, is going to be willing to give up our sovereignty in order to control what they perceive as a doomsday scenario, that if they don't get a handle on it within the next 10 years, that's what we've been hearing now. Actually, if you remember back in the early 1990s, they said we had 10 years to do it or we're doomed. Well, now it's been 15 years ago now, and of course nothing's changed. Well, the same thing is going on right now. Global warming is occurring, don't get me wrong, but it's not caused by man. We had what was called a little ice age back in the 1700s and 1800s, and during that period of time we were able to, there's a high correlation between sunspot activity and the energy output of the sun. There were almost no solar flares, no sunspots during the 17 and early 1800s, and it got about a degree and a half colder than it is right now. It is very interesting that the solar radiation and the Earth's temperature are highly correlated. In fact, they can actually be almost on a daily coordination. We had a major solar eruption back in 1998 at the same time as we had El Nino, and we had a solar spike within a week, a temperature increase within a week of that event that peaked out within a few days, about a week or so, and this is global. This isn't just the United States or a local regional area. This was global. And the two in combination, the El Nino and a solar spike in which we had a major solar eruption that was pointed right at Earth, actually changed the Earth's temperature right away. And if you go back into the 1700s, you can actually see the correlation between the Earth's temperature and the emissions of radiant energy by the sun.
One of the ironies, I think, of our times is the fact that during the 1960s and so forth, they begin to have a dogma that the environment is being destroyed by human beings. And this was perpetrated or spread out through the media. You can't watch any nature program on chimpanzees, whales, it doesn't really matter, without coming away from the fact that human beings are a virus. We're killing planet Earth, according to this media hype that we've had ever since the 1960s. Now it's global warming. You can't hardly go through a week without hearing some scare story about global warming, that if we don't stop it in the next few years, the Earth is going to boil up and blow away, even though that there's been times in history where it's been much warmer than it is today, and of course, obviously, times in history where it's been much colder. None of these things really by themselves really are caused necessarily by human activity. It's a natural cycle. We can destroy the environment. We can destroy ecosystems. But now we have the incentive to maintain ecosystems, to manage ecosystems, but that's not good enough. We can actually manage ecosystems better than nature can herself. We can make ecosystems healthier, but that's not an alternative. Their alternative is that you have no use. That's the only solution that they have for protecting the environment, is you cannot use it. You cannot use it. You must protect it. You must put it in the form of wilderness, whatever the case might be. Well, nonetheless, we cannot use it. Humans are the cause of the problem.
We have many people in our university systems right now, PhDs and so forth, that really believe that we must reduce our human population by 70, 80, even 90% in order to protect Mother Earth. Many of these people actually believe that there should be wholesale slaughter of human beings in one form or another, either through disease or actual government programs of some sort or another. The actual Wildlands Project itself that I fought back in the 1990s calls for the reduction in human population of 80% in the next 50 years. They don't say how to get there, although they do make it very clear that they would probably do it through agricultural means. They really truly believe that if fertilizers and so forth cause ecological destruction, because they believe that, then we must reduce the use of fertilizers, and it's fertilizers and genetic improvement and so forth that have caused the green revolution that fed the world from the 1960s on. If we eliminate that, we'll only have food production enough for about a third of the global population that we have today. That would eliminate the population within one generation. One of the things that Carroll Quigley, one of the foremost historians of the 20th century, said after going through all the documentations of the global elite for at least 2 years, said in his book, Tragedy and Hope, towards the end of the 20th century, the expert will replace the democratic voter in control of the political system. This is because planning will inevitably replace laissez-faire in the relationship between government and business. This planning may not be single or unified, but it will be planning in which the main framework and operational forces of the economic system will be established and limited by the experts on the governmental side, and then the experts on the economic side will do their planning within these established limits. And so what Carroll Quigley is saying is that by the 21st century, we are going to be living in a planned society controlled by the experts. Now, look back, now that we're in the 21st century, has not that occurred? It has, just as he said was going to happen. But of course, he had access to the records of what they were intending to do. But it actually gets worse. Back in 1965, the Department of Health and Education and Welfare, HEW, sponsored a study to define how they're going to get from where they were then in 1965 to where we are now in the 21st century. They came out with a report in 1969 called the Behavioral Science Teacher Education Program that's now fully integrated within our educational program. And this is what they said, and I want to have you hang on to your hats because you will not believe what they planned to do back in 1965-69 and what is happening actually today. He said calculations of the future and how to modify it are no longer considered to be an obscure academic pursuit. Long-range planning and implementation of plans will be made by a technological scientific elite. This will strain the democratic fabric to the ripping point. The Protestant ethic will atrophy as more and more enjoyed a varied, leisured, and guaranteed sustenance. Work as a means to, and an end of living will diminish. Most people will tend to be hedonistic, and a dominant elite will provide the bread and circuses to keep social dissension and disruption at a minimum. A small elite will carry society's burdens. The resulting impersonal manipulation of most people's lifestyles will be softened by provision for pleasure seeking and guaranteed physical necessities. The controlling elite will engage in power plays largely without the involvement of most of the people. And that is so true today. Most people have no idea what's going on in the international arena, have none. Almost all of this is being done in secrecy. Going on with this report, the society will be a leisurely one. People will study, play, and travel. Some will be in various stages of the drug-induced experiences. Each individual will receive at birth a multi-purpose identification which will have, amongst other things, extensive communications and control uses. Each individual will be saturated with ideas of information. Each will be self-selected. Other kinds will be imposed overtly by those who assume the responsibility for the other's actions. Relatively few individuals will be able to maintain control over their opinions. Most will be pawns of competing opinion molders. It's amazing how back in the 1960s they began the process of getting us to where we are right now. If you look at society today, almost every one of the characteristics that I read have come true. We are living in a planned society. We are living focused on leisure and recreation. We live in a drug-induced society. All of the things that they talked about in the 1960s have become a reality by the 21st century. This is the level of extent of control that they have. Most people's opinions are not done through education and through knowledge. They're done by molding your ideas. And that's why it's very hard for the average person to understand the fact that we're moving into a global society that is totally controlled by puppeteers, the global elite. In moving towards their ultimate objective of having world government, they have created various crises along the way over the last 100 years. World War I, as we've talked about, was contrived. World War II was contrived. We got the United Nations as a result of World War II, which was one of their big goals. Even though they denied the fact that they ever intended to have the United Nations as a world government, some of their more esoteric documents show very clearly that that's what they intended right from the start. And we're starting to see that now with the Commission on Global Governance. All the international treaties that we're looking at, especially the environmental treaties, basically are like these strands over Gulliver and Gulliver's Travels. One strand does not necessarily trap us, but when you have hundreds of these international treaties and all of these regulations, when you have the North American Union where you give up your basic sovereignty to a group of international bureaucrats, all of these things are strands that literally tie us down to the point that we no longer have freedom to cause development. We no longer have economic freedom. We no longer have a free market enterprise. We no longer have the ability to profit from innovation. And that will ultimately destroy us. Now that we no longer have war to maintain stability within the population, and maintain control, which is kings and queens and bureaucrats and tyrants and so forth through history have used war, we have to have an alternative form of terror in order to maintain the stability of people and the allegiance of people behind their government. That is now taking the form of terrorism. It's a perfect recipe. Back in 1967, there was a report called the Iron Martin Report that was released, calling for environmental holocaust and so forth to accomplish the same thing. That worked to a point, but did not take them where they fully wanted to go. And they now have this mechanism of always the constant fear of terrorist attack to keep us off our feet, to keep us willing to give up our freedoms in order to gain peace and security. Carroll Quigley, in his book Tragedy and Hope, basically said they were willing to work with communists, they're willing to work with fascists, they're willing to work with any of these isms or whatever, because those groups
control their population, and they want to control the population. So they're more than willing to work with those groups. They say they're capitalists, but understand their form of capitalism is nothing more than controlled economies. It's not true free markets. It's not even true capitalism. It's capitalism only to a certain percentage of the population that are part of the global elite or part of the upper crust. In many ways, it's either crony capitalism or a monopoly, because those are the people, those people that rise to the top, and there are not going to be very many of them, that benefit from this fascist form of government.
In that building is congregating 100 of the most elite people on the planet, a bunch of scum. And they're so intimidated by accredited journalists just trying to cover what they're doing that they pull stunts in every country getting people detained, arrested, or deported. This time it backfired on them because the press learned of it. Think about it. 5-6 years ago, the national press said the Bilderberg Group did not exist. Of course, it was founded by a top Dutch Nazi, the Crown Prince, in the early 1950s after World War II. And this is nothing more than the mafia meeting and colluding together to bring in their world government. We've gotten their minutes, we've gotten their documents. These people, for 27 years, Jim Tucker's been covering this. Jim every year gets documents, minutes of their meetings from employees inside these facilities that find out how evil they are. And what's in there? Discussions of world domination, world tax, getting rid of Canada and the U.S. and Mexico's sovereignty, the American Union. And now, because of brave people like you see here, it's now mainstream news in Canada. It's even on CNN that they're setting up world government. They're not going to get rid of Canada, the U.S., or Mexico. They're not going to merge us. We're going to stop it. Those men right there, those men are destroying your children's future. Those men are absolute criminals and will be exposed.
They talk about the founder being an SS guy. The co-founder's name is Redinger, the Zionist.
Yeah.
Of course, the Zionists and the Nazis had a lot in common.
They did actually work together.
Jews out of Europe.
They actually worked together, yep.
Sure they did.
Very evil.
They're still working together.
So what do you think these guys are up to in there?
Well, we know what they're up to. We've gotten their documents repeatedly. We have moles inside. And they're setting up world government, world taxation. They openly call us slaves, and they have other poor slaves guarding them. And it's, what are they afraid of? They're afraid of the truth because criminals, organized crime, meet in secret with our leaders trying to take our freedoms. That simple.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, there's lots of planets. You got to understand there's billions upon billions of planets in the universe. And, you know, we can afford to blow up a planet here and there. We've got antimatter bombs in the works, and when that gets ready, we're going to blow up the whole solar system. We're not going to stop at just one planet. We're going to blow up the solar system because, you know, there's lots of solar systems in the universe. There's billions upon billions of them. You blow up one here and there, who's going to notice?
Exactly.
You know? So I say we've been stockpiling these bombs for 50, 60 years, wondering what to do about it, listening to those terrorists in the streets telling us we shouldn't do things like that. Well, it's about time we put our foot down and put these bombs to good use and teach these people a lesson about democracy and freedom.
Well, George Bush has been saying he wants to use the nukes.
Well, he's been saying it for a long time, and I knew he wanted to use the nukes even before September 11, 2001. I was trying to tell everybody, but they would look at me kind of strange, you know, and they wouldn't answer my emails and stuff like that, but I kept at it. After September 11, I said, well, this time everybody's going to notice. I mean, it's so blatantly obvious. They're not going to get the wool pulled over their eyes this time around.
Was 9/11 an inside job?
Well, I think this answers your question. If 9/11 is an inside job, what was surprising is the number of people on the inside. It's just amazing, the quantity of people on the inside willing to stand up for this and use it as a pretext to go and bomb countries halfway across the world. it's just blew me away. I've been traumatized by September 11th. I didn't think the people were that gullible, ignorant, and willingly stupid. You know,
All right.
It just blew
Thanks,
me away.
thanks for talking to us.
You're welcome.
Hey, Alex, can you talk about how these guys connect with the Illuminati?
Well, they don't connect with the Illuminati. They are the Illuminati.
Right here, man.
There's no doubt that many of the people in there are Satanists. And again, I'm just a reporter. 10 years ago, I laughed at this, and there were some Channel 4 reporters, TV crew, in Texas, and they were saying, you know, do you know about this Skull and Bones, Bohemian Grove? And I went and started investigating it. And of course, in 2000, I infiltrated into the Bohemian Grove, where Bush and all the rest of them go, and it's been on national U.S. television. The Grove admits I snuck in and got their ritual on tape. They say it's no big deal. As old men, we get in red and black robes and run around naked and worship 45-foot stone owls. I mean, hell, when you got trillions of dollars, that's what you do. You run around the woods naked and worship big owls. I mean, you know.
And what about the
And
Freemasons?
they're homos.
It's like Peter Jennings said. You know, he played a clip of it and played a clip of Skull and Bones and said they're just having fun. You know, no big deal.
Stealing, robbing skulls from
I
graves.
mean, it's like Eyes Wide Shut. You know, that's based on what really goes on.
Ripping people's
Big
hearts
deal.
and throats out.
This is what people do, you know. It's Christian. We're probably having some Eyes Wide Shut action in there right now. Everyone in here is like wanted for something. God almighty.
He says he's good though. He doesn't need to do it. I said, Google in Bilderberg. He says, no, I'm good.
No. They're good. We don't want to know we work for criminals.
Actually, I think he was flipping off the guard, not us.
As a Canadian tax-paying citizen, I cannot believe in a country that has a democracy like ours. We are being put through this lies of the secret agenda of the Bilderberg Group, which have only their interests in mind. And when oil's at $150 a barrel next year, and everybody starts to go down and the middle class is eroded, there'll be them on top and all of us at the bottom.
Are we going to try to go inside?
No. Hell
Why not?
no.
Why not?
Because I'm not going to give them what they want, man. We know who they are. We're trying to just show the fact that they're in there nesting right now,
That's what we are doing.
conspiring.
My name's Jeff Matthews. I'm a Canadian, and I extend my apologies to the way you were treated, which was disgraceful, sir. I run an independent newspaper. It's called the Kingston Eye Opener. And from a historical standpoint, if anybody's interested, in the 1920s, there was a legendary editor of a free press in Canada called the Calgary Eye Opener. Bob Edwards was the editor of the Calgary Eye Opener. If you're a Canadian or an American, look up the history of that. It's a beautiful history. We've taken his name out of respect for the great achievements of Bob Edwards in the 1920s. This is the third year we're covering Bilderberg. Last year and the year before, we were the only Canadian press I'm aware of that even mentioned Bilderberg. We were able to cover it thanks to Daniel Estulin. And what I believed when I'm 50-something now, when I was a kid, I was brought up that a free press was an essential part of a free country. That without a free press, without an independent press, everything was going to go to pieces. And I'm not too sharp, but I've seen the quality of reporting and radio and television and the newspapers go steadily downhill. Just a few days ago, it was Sunday morning in the 7:30 CBC Radio News. That's the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, our national news. We were told unconfirmed reports suggest that there may have been a possible target, somewhere. Didn't said maybe Ottawa, but what kind of reporting is this? Unconfirmed report suggests that possible targets may have been, and we're supposed to get scared. That's the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. That's basically Canadian government, our national radio, giving us that quality of reporting.
What do you think of I mean, not just talk about myself, but since you brought it up, it's scary when they had been told, they admitted Bilderberg, had contact, and they called it the conference, that was worried about me, that Bilderberg would be trying to keep me from getting in, and they almost did it if press wouldn't have heard and shown up. I mean, they're to the point of trying to suppress in North America, folks, supposed bastion of freedom, Canada and the U.S., the press.
Yeah, I know what happened to you. It was a disgrace. It's a national disgrace, incidentally. But what you have is bullies. And have you ever seen a smart bully? I never have seen a smart bully. I've seen guys that throw their weight around. And these guys are used to throwing their weight around. They say, keep this guy out. We don't want to be bothered. They're not smart because it backfired. It's like egg all over their face. You had a rough 14 hours, and I personally apologize as a Canadian.
No, it's not your fault.
But no, as a Canadian, I apologize. Not as it wasn't me, but as a Canadian, a member of this country, I apologize. And I think every Canadian will apologize. But But it was the stupidest dumb stunt they've pulled in a long time in a long list of stupid stunts, because that got national news, got them more attention than they ever had before, and the whole country of Canada is embarrassed about what happened to you.
I wonder if they're going to let me get out of here.
Stick around. It just gets better.
I know. Hey, I love Canada. Everybody from Canada is really smart and really nice. I mean, you think Canadians aren't informed of what's going on? It's really bad in the U.S.
Yes, I've heard. I've seen. We've both seen more than enough. At any rate, we'll be covering this Bilderberg conference again this year in our little newspaper, our little independent newspaper, and it's been a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Do you think it makes them angry? Well, a pleasure meeting you. Do you think it's made them angry that they woke up that morning and the National Post was the front page, the Ottawa Citizen, all these papers, myself on the front page of the National Post, coming out of customs?
Oh, yeah? I'm sure it upset them. I'm sure it upset them. And they'll find the most junior guy in Customs Canada and they'll fry him. But those are the guys that were responsible for it.
Yeah, which is why they're under arrest here.
So anyway, of course it upsets them, but bullies are stupid. You're dealing with bullies. They've never had to be accountable. They've always used their power to shut people up, and it's not working. I think that's what they don't understand. It's not working.
Well, you're right. Up until about 6 years ago, we never saw in major U.S. papers or Canadian papers never a mention of Bilderberg. Now it's finally all over the place. Europe, it's all over the place. What is that a sign of? What is that a sign of that this is happening?
It's a sign that an independent press is growing. What I don't know is, are enough of the public listening? That's my great prayer, is that enough of the public are listening. Because you can keep telling them, I can keep telling them, but is there enough of the public going to listen against the tidal wave of trash media? You know, all the cheap thrill stuff, all the commercial stuff. Are people really going to learn what's going on? Because what is happening to the United States, to Canada, to Mexico is terrible, terrible, terrible stuff.
Can you talk about the American Union? I mean, the CFR writes the white papers for their agenda. They carry out Bilderberg's orders. That's on record. And even Lou Dobbs on CNN saying, American Union, end of Canada, end of U.S. They are actually, through the trade deals, already starting to bleed us.
Well, I breezed through what in Canada we've referred to as the Manley Report. John Manley was a previous Deputy Prime Minister, and he sat on a Council of Foreign Relations committee with Mexicans and Americans. The two were John Manley and Thomas Aquino, who's president of the Council of Chief Executives, a bunch of very big business guys. And they put this report together. And it started off by saying, does it not make sense that Canada and the U.S. should be one, that we should have a common currency? Does it not just make enormous sense that we should have a common border? To ask the question is to answer it. Now, that was right in the report. You know, these guys are trying to sell us this bill of goods. Now, fortunately, when it got to the House of Commons, it didn't do very well. So they've just put it under the table for a while till people are looking the other way. Maybe Christmas morning when everybody else is out of the House, they'll pass it. I don't know what'll happen. But that's what I'm sure. Then there were Americans on that thing pushing the same agenda, and they're just waiting till nobody's watching.
They've had joint congresses with your parliament, the U.S. Congress, and the Mexican Congress in Mexico.
Yep. I mean,
can you speak to that?
Well, I don't know all the details, and I have to learn more, but I know they're just waiting for us to look the other way so they can whisk it through. And as I just drove, I was away for about 24 hours because I had to leave yesterday, went all the way to Toronto, drove back. And I'm listening to some radio station, I can't tell you which one it was, and there was a story about a minor riot, I believe it was in Halifax, one of the maritime capital cities of the maritime province of Canada, because the people were upset that a transnational commercial area was being declared called Atlantica, which is what this agenda is about, and that they were going to lose jobs. And I didn't catch the details. Maybe some of you other fellows in the...
St. Louis is being given to Mexico. The huge rail yards, these huge highways, and a stretch of highway from St. Louis, the biggest rail yard in the U.S., all the way down to Mexico. They're giving them our country right now. I mean, I'm sure you've heard about foreign countries buying our ports, all this.
Yeah, I heard about that, and I heard about the uproar too. Congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what, and either Canadians and United States citizens are going to rise up against this and stop it, or else you can say goodbye to your country. It's really that simple.
Thanks for talking to us. Anything else you want to add?
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Tell us about your website.
I don't have a website. I have a little paper. I don't have a website.
You're kicking butt. Hey, stop and let me in front of you. Let me in front of you. Okay. Which way do you want to go to get back to town?
Let's just take the freeway.
Which way is that?
I'm in March right now. Just go, keep going straight till you get to 4.
Then take a right north?
17, yeah, like we did before. You're gonna go east.
No, those aren't cops. They're hot though. All right, 417 east?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we should have pulled up beside him at the stoplight like they did. Is there anyone in that car?
Can't tell. I can't tell to see.
Yes, there's an old man right there. He's in the passenger back. It's in the right-hand corner.
Let's see. Won't be able to identify him, but
I can see him through the glass. Some distinguished, like,
His glasses.
70-year-old man.
yeah, I could see his glasses, but let's see.
East?
Yeah.
This is what we should have been doing the whole time, tailing these people. So what do you think about this whole thing, man? Tell us about you.
Oh, jeez, put me on the spot. Well, pretty much everything I know is I got from you. You're my inspiration for looking into this stuff, yeah.
You live around here?
Yeah, I live about 30 seconds that way.
Wow.
Yeah, when I found out they were coming to the Brook Street, I was like, I gotta go and see. I knew that Alex would be here for sure. So
here we are.
Yeah.
And none of the glory. Sir, why are you here?
Just to get a first-hand glimpse of the most evil people in the world, pretty much.
You know, the media comes out in droves. If you had 120 top Hollywood stars meeting in secret on top of it, people would be wondering, what's going on? What's happening? But for many years, we couldn't get the press to ever report on this. In fact, they'd say it didn't exist.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how they could, not that many people are aware of it, and the press won't report it, they refuse to report it. It shows how powerful these people are and their influence.
Well, I appreciate you coming out.
I wonder how many of these guys are going to be at the Grove next month, meeting at, seeing Mr. Moloch there.
A lot of them.
Yeah, I think so, in their robes and everything. It's pretty crazy.
Think of anything more horrifying. Hey, Daniel, where were you? We have got them now. We are exposing them more and more and more. Have you heard of the American Union?
Yeah. Here's.
Yeah. Well, you're a big part of it.
Yeah.
It's been in your
That's
papers.
what they're called, Bilderberg.
Eh?
Bilderberg.
Infowars.com. Infowars.com.
What'd you do?
Man with the camera at the front. Hello. We've been parking there all the whole time. 20 cars have.
Sir, you can't park there.
Really? Well, where can we park? Everybody's been parking there with the police here all. Okay.
All right?
Sure. Now they're telling us we can't park there. Huh? Yeah, the sign does say otherwise. In fact, get video of that. Get video of that. Notice that it says, parking from this point forward. More color of law. Oh, the light's back. Ma'am, it says no parking from that sign back. But I'm from the U.S. I may have trouble understanding signs. Can you explain the municipal law to me? Well, officer, I'm more than happy to comply with the law. Will you come? The sign says from here back. The sign says from the sign back you can't park. The sign, we have the same signs. But will you explain to me? So you're saying that sign has arrows pointing both ways? It says an arrow pointing this way. Yes, ma'am, it does. We were here with officers for 3 days. We're allowed to park there unless the sign's changed. Wonder what it is. Yes, sir. Sir, can you say that again? I'm hard of hearing.
If you can just stay off the roadway, we don't want anybody hitting you guys or anything like that.
Okay, when the cars come through, we're trying to get pictures of them as journalists. They've been trying to cover their faces up. That's, I mean, we did it yesterday in front of the police and the day
I'm
before.
not on an interview, sir. Stick that out of me.
Okay.
It's just if you can. If
Just
you
so
guys
windy
wanna
we
take
can't hear
pictures,
you.
Do so on the sidewalk.
You mean right over there on the sidewalk?
You can go either way. It doesn't matter. Just as long as you're not impeding the traffic.
Officers.
Yes, sir.
Blacked out windows, lots of black sedans, old men hiding their faces. You gonna go investigate Bilderberg Group, sir?
Can't do that.
Can't do it, huh?
No. We've got a task here, my friend.
I hear you.
And that's to sit here and keep the peace.
Yeah, move up another. Go ahead. talking to, seriously, we're talking to Canadians about what you think about the move by your government and the U.S. government to merge Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. together as an American union. Did you hear about the Bilderberg group that was meeting here in town?
We're all pages at the House of Commons and can't comment on political issues. Jeff can. Yes. Jeff.
Well, I mean, do you want to give up Canadian sovereignty?
No.
What do you think of what the Bilderberg group's doing?
I don't even know who they are.
Well, they're meeting here in town. They're the folks that founded the European Union, and they're openly pushing for an American union through so-called trade deals, but the agreements are really to create a supranational state.
Is this a deal like free trade?
That's how they sell it, but the agreements are public. It is really getting rid of Canada's sovereignty as well as the U.S.
So then we wouldn't have to sell you all our wood anymore?
Exactly.
Oh. No, I don't think that's a good idea.
I don't think it's a good idea either.
Sweet.
But the U.S. is going to lose its sovereignty too. It's like Germany and France going to the euro; they start losing their sovereignty, and that's how the euro started. Was the euro started as an economic community, and that's what the Bilderberg Group is meeting to do right now. You guys didn't hear about this? It's been all over radio and TV. Wait, you did hear about it?
Sorry, we're not allowed to talk.
Really?
Yeah,
like we do work in this place.
So you're not allowed to comment on activities going on in here. You're allowed to comment as...
Nothing of a political nature.
Really? Well, that doesn't sound like a free country to me.
We signed a contract.
It's a contract.
You signed a contract not to talk to anybody.
We're pages at the House of Commons. We have to maintain our impartiality for this year.
Yeah. So you can't even discuss the end of your country's sovereignty.
Not even if I wanted to.
All right. Well, we're friendly. We're just trying. I mean, seriously, folks, this is really happening. The European Union started as an economic community. They signed the agreements. It's even been on CNN. They're getting rid of our countries right now. And the average Canadian we've talked to doesn't know. Even less Americans know. I mean, I'm not putting Canadians down. You guys are more informed than Americans. It's dangerous. You guys are politically informed. That's why a few of you even knew about this. This is serious. American Union, check it out. Thanks for talking to us. And I'm sorry for interrupting. How's your croquet game going?
We're winning.
You're winning?
Yeah.
All right. I like your outfits. There's not any programming going on from Virgin. We've got the Parliament right over here. By the way, they admit that the Parliament, they have top professors in this country and other historians, that a group of Masons paid for the design of the Parliament, and that the whole thing is built according to occultic specifications. And we have this little calling card, 666, right here. Well, I mean, sir, did you hear about Bilderberg?
Yeah.
What did you hear about it?
I just saw a little bit about it on the internet.
From what you saw on the net, what do you think it is?
I don't know, kind of a organization or something to, I don't know, maybe talk about world events or something.
When they were set up in 1954 by Prince Bernhard, who was an SS officer, their main function was to create a European Union. And their own documents have now been released where they said we have to call it a trade deal to fool the people. The same thing's now happening. The American Union is already in the middle steps, very close to being complete, and the average American or Canadian isn't even aware. Though I have seen it in some Canadian papers that Canadians are aware that you're losing your sovereignty. Are you guys concerned about Canada losing its sovereignty?
Well, I guess so. I mean, I don't know too much about it, but...
I think it's the media's job. That's what we're trying to do, to start having a debate about this. I personally am against it. I don't want you to lose your sovereignty. I don't want the U.S. to lose its sovereignty. Do you have any comments, sir?
None at all.
All right. Thanks for talking to us. All right. Ma'am, have you heard of the Bilderberg Group?
Well, I know that they're in town. Yes, they're meeting in Canada at the Brook Street restaurant. Hotel,
yes,
sorry. Yeah.
You're right.
And yeah, that's about it. I mean, what else is there to know?
There are 120 of the most powerful people in the world, Queen Beatrix, David Rockefeller, and they set up the European Union back in 1954. They're setting up the American Union right now. It's even been on CNN. They're getting rid of the sovereignty of Canada, Mexico, and the U.S., merging us, and the average American or Canadian or Mexican is totally unaware. Have you heard any rumblings of the merger?
No, I haven't. No, my understanding is that they're just talking strictly business. That's what their agenda is. I don't know that they have any political agenda.
Oh, yeah, their stated agenda is, well, world government.
Well, I'm not aware of it, if that's the case, but I found it difficult to believe.
Sure. Would you be for getting rid of national sovereignty?
National sovereignty. But what do you mean by that?
Would you be for Canada relinquishing
power over itself?
Of course I'd be against it.
Fantastic.